The EVGA GeForce GTX 1650 Super SC Ultra Gaming is a name many budget gamers looking for graphics cards may have heard. This GPU is a lower-end model aimed at budget gamers seeking a capable 1080p gaming GPU. Also, details about the products we speak about will be linked down in the description. The EVGA GTX 1650 SC Ultra GDDR6 model has a small form factor. It weighs 565G, 1.24 pounds, and measures 7.96 by 4.38 by 1.47 inches. It's a full 2-slot card that extends about 5 centimeters beyond the end of the PCIe slot, but it should fit in almost any PC case that supports a dedicated GPU. It's wonderful to see that EVGA included a full coverage metal backplate even on a cheap GPU. It may theoretically aid in cooling the card, however, it appears unneeded. The biggest advantage we perceive is that it protects the sensitive components on the rear of the graphics card from damage. The cooler is straightforward, with a single heat pipe wrapping around to help dissipate heat to the heatsink's fin array. Airflow is provided by 285mm axial fans with a plastic shroud directing the air across the heatsink fins. While EVGA makes no mention of it, the card appears to offer 0 decibel fan technology, which turns off the fans while the GPU is inactive. Even while running at full speed, the fans normally spin at less than 2000 RPM and are extremely quiet. There are 2 DisplayPort 1.4 outputs and 1 HDMI 2.0B port for video. When the cooler is removed, the PCB and power circuits are quite modest in comparison to what we find on larger, higher performance graphics cards. And quite deservedly so. A single 6-pin PEG power connector provides more power, most likely due to the factory overclock. The GTX 1650 could theoretically run on the 75-watt power of the PCIe X16 slot alone, but EVGA adds a 6-pin PEG to ensure there's more than enough power available. Moving on to the performance, the EVGA SC Ultra is a budget graphics card. It isn't designed or recommended for 1440p or 4K gaming, but we do test all cards at higher settings. 1080p is still a popular gaming resolution, and the GTX 1650 easily runs most games at medium settings at over 60 frames per second. Across the average test suite, the card averages 80.3 frames per second at 1080p medium, and the average 99th percentile score is higher than 60. Individual games, on the other hand, exhibit occasional drops. Metro Exodus is the only game that does not average 60 frames per second, yet still manages a decent 55 frames per second. Borderlands 3, Final Fantasy XIV, Red Dead Redemption 2 and Shadow of the Tomb Raider, on the other hand, have minimum frame rates that go below 60. As expected, increasing the resolution to 1080p Extreme has no effect on the 4GB card. Performance declines by 32%, with average frame rates dropping to 54.6 frames per second. There are still games where the EVGA can exceed 60 frames per second, but there are many more where it can't, and 3 of them, Borderlands 3, Metro Exodus and Red Dead Redemption 2, are dangerously near to slipping below 30. GPU core clocks were 200 MHz higher than the advertised 1710 MHz boost clock. During the gaming phase of the test, the EVGA card averaged 1916 MHz clocks. In certain other games, it may run at lower clock speeds. Rapid overclock enhanced performance by 7% on average, with certain games showing up to an 8% increase in performance. The minimum frame rate does not improve as much, and the constrained 4GB VRAM undoubtedly contributes to this. Overclocking increased power and heat slightly, but not as significantly as you may anticipate. All in all, this EVGA card may not be a top performer in all types of benchmarks, but its appeal is more complex than benchmark numbers alone suggest. With a reduced physical footprint, a highly recognized warranty department, and a step-up program that allows purchasers to spend the difference on a more powerful GPU, it's evident that EVGA has a lot to offer a potential buyer in this market category. Click on the video on your screen to check out other graphic cards like the AMD Radeon RX 7900 XT.